will dive into Statoil, but first I'll give you just a brief introduction on who am I. So as Tone tried to say, it's a hard name to pronounce, right? So Sonja Kiriko Indrebø, which is, Kiriko is actually my maiden name because I'm half Italian. My father's Italian. I'm married Indrebø, which is extremely Norwegian, so it's a kind of a good combination there. I'm born here in Stavanger, raised and actually went to the UK for as a student. So I'm an electronic engineer by training. That was interesting when it comes to girls and boys, because of course we were 120 students and we were only 4 girls. But it's a very good thing to be. You were really very much a diva in that sense, right? You know, you could see where all the guys grouped. You know, they were in 4 big chunks around the 4 girls, right? I found my husband there, so we've been married since then, so it's a good thing. So I would encourage all young girls to go into something that's linked to the industry. I worked for several years, 6 years, within what we call engineering, which is Aker Engineering was called then, the company, now Aker Solutions. Very much linked into the offshore industry. It was around design and construction of our offshore plants. So I worked close to that for a long time before I started in Statoil in '98. And there I went first into telecommunications, which was the offshore telecommunications part, and then started in IT in 2000. The reason why I chose to shift first from instrumentation to telecoms, it was very much linked to my preference was from my university degree was satellite communication, so I was very keen on getting into that area. The other one I worked with was radars, not very much radar technology in Norway, so I actually did 1 year of radars in the UK. But working with telecommunication was very much something that I also saw was a converging technology, very much growing into the network, the IT communication. So I chose to learn more about networks. So I went into that area and I stayed on. So I've been within the IT area since 2000. So I worked technically for many years there as well. So I'm actually a Cisco certified network professional. So I've been doing configuration and not coding, but I also have been programming for years before that. Then after some more years working in technical areas, I decided to take on my first leadership role in 2006. And since then, I have had various leadership roles within our company. So since the beginning of 2011, I'm the CIO, so Chief Information Officer, and Senior Vice President of IT. So that brings me to who is Statoil. So a lot of you are local, you know Statoil, but for those who are not, Statoil is an international oil and gas company, headquartered here in Stavanger, but we're in 36 countries. We're actually top 100 fortune companies of the world. I think after the oil price decline, we've gone down to number 103. But knowing how many companies there are in the world, you know, Norway having a company that's 103 ranked, it's very huge. We have around 22,000 employees, but the business we do is very much around also collaborating with others. So when I come to the IT solutions, it's a much broader picture than only for our own employees. So what our company does is that we explore, so we look for oil and gas underground. In the exploration, it's very much about data, because we cannot, of course, start drilling and then check if there's something. We have to try to understand the underground using techniques to visualize what's there, to try to go for the right spots. And we drill for kilometers before we actually get to the pockets where hopefully there is oil or gas or both. And it's a huge investment and it's a huge risk. So talking about risk takers, because we don't find every time. The success rate lies between 30 and 40%. So that means a lot of the investments we actually do, we go out and we actually have dry wells, which is something we want to avoid. But IT is very important in that area to make better decisions, to understand more. And it's also an area where we've been doing a lot of big data for many, many years. It's huge volumes, and most of the data is noise. So it's actually finding the patterns. And that's why I found it quite fascinating to listen into how we're actually taking knowledge from our seismic data and seismic world into security, and how to actually look for patterns in that area. But after we hopefully find something, we need to drill, and we do a lot of drilling operations around the world, a lot of sensors linked to that to make it more efficient, secure, ensure that we are doing it in the most optimal way. So the sensors are extracting a lot of data and sending it to a center here in Stavanger, where we have all the operations going into one. And we use that data in various applications and various other disciplines. So then it's our production, which is of offshore fields and also onshore fields, huge platforms that we call them. And then from there, there's a huge logistics operation linked to that. It's also about our pipelining this gas to Europe. Norway or Statoil through Norway is the second largest gas provider to Europe. So it's very important for us to have sustainable and reliable sources of energy delivered. And we are the largest oil operator of the world. So we operate the most, even more than Exxon and Shell. And then from part of that business also goes into that we trade. So we not only sell our own producers, but we buy and sell. So we have a big trading business, which is very similar to banks. So again, a very IT-heavy business. And then we also do renewables. So we have invested heavily in offshore wind. So we have both tried out new methods, new technology, because we believe that we have internally competence on how to make big projects offshore, and that we can utilize that also within the renewables business. So especially outside the UK, we have now big wind farms providing electricity to the UK. So all these areas are very high on IT, and they're growing and growing and growing. And we have our internal bank, because all these assets needs money. And so even the challenges of banks are within our area. So going back then to having the responsibility, the IT responsibility for all of this in the whole corporation, it's humbling, because a lot of people rely on secure solutions. And it's also the challenge of making business happen and at the same time securing it. And I agree with the last speaker that the most secure thing I can do is just pull out all the internet connections and all the other things and say, now you're secure, but you can't do your job. So this is not about finding the most secure solution, because it will never exist. It's about understanding what kind of risk are we willing to take, and where do we take the risks. So how do we approach this in a way that it's not by chance, but it's actually by design. So I'm not going to bore you with a lot of slides. I actually only have one. So I'll have to keep you awake other ways. So I'll try to explain a little bit of what is it that we see and how we work, and then also where do we believe we're actually going. But another thing I would like to bring into this is you need to visualize. Okay, this big company spread around in 36 countries, lots of location. It's already operating a lot of, call it systems that needs to be reliable. It's about, you know, ensuring that we have producing what we need to do. We also have a lot of projects ongoing in yards around the world, so we need to connect people in various forms. And we have 4 core values in our company. First is open. So a very key DNA for us is collaboration. It comes out of how we have made our business, how we have grown from 1972 when Statoil actually was started into the company 103rd in the world. So it's very important for us to do that. And I'm sure for all the security experts in the world, you get kind of, horrible, back cribbling when you hear collaboration. Because the more we open, the more we collaborate, the more we interconnect, of course, the more challenge it's on our security and how we secure these things. But the second of our values is courageous. So we also say we need to be courageous. We need to be able to take energy to the world in a smarter way, in a different way. So, for example, in Norway, we haven't been, fakling, which is a very Norwegian word, but we don't send, extra gas and burn it. We haven't done that for many, many years. You will not see any kind of burning gas in this country. And that's because we have found other ways of ensuring that the excess gas that's, a problem is used in optimal ways. So for us it's very important to attack all our challenges in that way, not just copy what everyone else has done, but be courageous enough to try out new ways and make them even smarter. And another thing we have done here, and that's a pilot for a lot of areas, is for 20 years we've been injecting the CO2 that's produced from our Sleipner field back again underneath. It's actually used to optimize and increase pressure so we can get the gas out. So it's used as a resource instead of as a waste and as a CO2 challenge for the globe. So these are areas where we need to be courageous. And then we are hands-on, it's a third value. So it really means understanding our business, understanding where we are. So it's not just making visions, but in making sure that they actually mean something out to the very end of the chains where we're doing. And I'll get back to how we work on that part in security, in IT security. And the last one is caring. So the caring part is not only about caring our colleagues, caring about each other, but caring about our society and where we are, ensuring that we are approaching this in a responsible way. So those 4 values are very key for us and very important for our success, but they also, when at least from a collaboration point of view, a challenge for our security. Then the slide. So we approach this in a holistic way. So in that sense, we say we don't attack this in isolated silos. We say we need to look at this, the information security and the way we secure our values or assets, through 3 main areas, but more on how it connects. So it's about our policies, our requirements, the guidelines we set, our codes of conduct, everything that is on the policy side. It's about our technology, of course, and we will have a lot of experts in the room that can say more about what could be done and what is being done. But last but not least, it's about our people, our behavior, the way we act. Because I'm sure you all have those examples, but I have one that I've never forgotten, and that I have 3 children. Our oldest daughter, she was cycling all the time until she realized that all the cool kids, they took off their cycling helmet, because it wasn't cool when you were like 14 to cycle around with this. And we said no helmet, no cycling. And she hasn't cycled since, and she is 20. So I don't know who is most stubborn, the parents or the daughter, but apple doesn't fall far from the tree, I guess. But there's something about not just saying what's important, but actually ensuring that the behavior is taking the consequence. Because if something is a risk, then you have to ensure that you're actually acting upon it, and it's not just because you want to or because this time you feel that it's okay. It's about taking risks seriously, but it's also about not over-proportioning risk, not calling everything a risk. Because if everything was a risk, you wouldn't let her out of the house, right? So it's about understanding where do you put the limits. What is it that you want to protect? Her head. What are the other things that you can manage even if she breaks an arm or she breaks a leg? So those are the things that are the valuable insight that we also need to put, because we cannot secure the whole thing. Can you again go back to imagining all these locations, all these people, all these partners? How would you, tell me, secure that everything there is okay? How will you secure that they don't print out a piece of paper and leave it on the plane? Or that they don't sit around talking on the phone and somebody can overhear? So how do you ensure that this is not just something that's on the side, on the policy, but actually ensured in their behavior? So that is very much where we want to be, but how do we get there? So on these requirements and the policies, we use international standards. And the reason why we do this is because we believe that the best collaboration you can get when you have a common language. So since we partner and we work with so many others, it's so important that we agree on what are the standards. So we use the ISO 2700 standard, mostly for what's all in the on the business support side. But in our plans, we use the IEC 62443, okay, which is on industrial IT systems. Because IT is not just about how to protect our office workers. We also have to make sure that we protect the plants. Because the way, as I mentioned, we work is that we collaborate. So what we did for many years ago, we pulled fiber to all our offshore installations. So if you go to the, on a platform offshore Norway, you had actually better lines than you had in most of the world in the early 2000s. So what we done there is that we called it integrated operations, but it was very much where we ensured that experts could sit where the experts were and they could help out on various installations. Instead of moving them to every installation if there was something and they needed to get something done, they could be onshore, but of course they also could be in the location where their expert company was. So integrated collaboration meant also that we had to open up for collaboration. So for us it was important that when we did this, we had a security approach to how do we do it, what are the boundaries that we want to have in place. But back again, it's not just about office workers, it's about process control systems, because today they are becoming more and more standard devices and not anymore proprietary as they used to be. And we have several examples where we see how it can go wrong if you're not conscious about it. So within our company, we have what we call the Oil and Gas Benchmarking Group, which is where we collaborate with 9 other oil and gas companies. So the others is Exxon, Shell, BP, Chevron, Total, Repsol, Petrobras, Petronas, ENI, and the last, ENI has gone out actually, so replaced by Petronas. But the last one I would like to mention is Saudi Aramco. So Saudi Aramco, you probably all remember, was hit by a big incident. And I remember the CIO, they used to be in Saudi Aramco, and their CISO, and then he had to leave on the 12th of August in 2012, which was where they had their D-Day kind of thing. And now there's a new CIO and a new CISO. So I know what's going to happen if something goes wrong. So I know where the responsibility lies. So it's so important for us that we are conscious about what is it that goes on. So we collaborate on information security between the companies. Because this is not where we try to out-compete each other. It's important for the industry to be secure, not every separate company on its own. So it's very important for us to share. And then they're back again to those standards. We work on prevent, detect, defer, and also respond, all those areas I'm sure you or all other companies are working on. And we also have our security operations center internally and a computer security incident response team, a CERT. So working on not just looking at what's going on at this special time, but how can we actually work proactively. And we work very closely with authorities with NorCERT, which is the Norwegian authorities on information security, but also with others in the various countries that we are in. So these are things where we don't want to be on our own. It's important for us to grasp out to the communities that can help, because the threats are getting, of course, bigger and bigger, and they're challenging in various aspects. And we see we are of course try to, everyone is trying to hack more or less for various reasons. And for us it's important that we are securing not just the perimeter, but that we are securing the most important assets. So what we do is zoning, so into the technology side, so that we are saying, this area we need to protect more than this area. So we have to be able to live with that some information will sometimes go adrift. But because it's impossible to protect everything as well. But what we do is try to make sure that we understand where are the risks. So what we do with the link between our policies and also technology and behavior is that we collaborate on information security also with the people security, which is where understanding if person is who he pretends to be, if he has the right qualification, and all the HR security perspectives, and with physical security. So that we're not just looking at this from a computer side, but we're also looking at the perimeter and the physical aspects of it. And what we do is we perform security risk assessments with a holistic view. And that is where we start on the top and we say, okay, given this responsibility in this area, what are the most important assets linked to information or physical assets? And how do we ensure that we understand what can actually go wrong? And where is it that we need to do or mitigate? And then we cascade that down. So we have cascaded this workshop, more or less, security risk assessment through the whole organization. So what it means is, for example, if you're working on business development, right? So your team have sat down and said, okay, what is it that we need to be aware of? Is it when we travel to new places where we're looking for new opportunities, do we want to be detected or do we want to go under the radar? Do we need to understand who can see us, or are we open about how we go about it? Do we understand how we can be seen? You can do like I did, which was a very interesting way. I'll just give you an example of where things can go wrong. I just been on a business holiday to India. And when I was on the airport, I realized I forgot my company credit card at home. I left it in another jacket. But then I thought, well, I have 3 more cards. I have a personal MasterCard, a personal Diners, and a Visa card. So I thought, I'll be fine. Let's go. India, here we go. And then I went there, and then I was going to pay my hotel bill. And one card didn't work, and the second card didn't work, and the third card didn't work. And I was like, and luckily I had a colleague, so he actually, I'll fix it for you, don't worry. And what had I done? Of course, I had secured my cards so that they couldn't be used in Asia, right? So that was very secure. I wasn't observed, nobody could track me. I wasn't using any credit cards, but it was a very hard way of actually traveling. So there you see, it's the thing, understanding what kind of traces do you leave behind, and when is it that you need to be aware of them. Most of the time we don't care. As was said, a lot of people have given up privacy because they want to be secure. But sometimes we don't want to give up privacy. We want to ensure that we actually understand who can follow us. But those workshops have been really crucial into getting the company to understand in what context do I need to be aware, and in what context doesn't it really matter. So that it's not an IT thing, this is what IT has decided needs to be secured, but it's very much the business that has come up with where is it that we see what is the business critical information. We've classified that, and we made sure that from an IT we respond and make those technical requirements even more heavy. So on a technology, we have high focus on detection. We built a lot of systems. We have all the intrusion detection, all the various systems that I'm sure you're all familiar with. What we have done, apart from just using the partners that we have and the authorities and all the others to help us out, what we also have done is that we have built our own Hadoop cluster, where we are actually gathering all the logs, and where we, as I mentioned, we have been we have a lot of experience with huge volumes of data in seismic and also in real-time drilling. So what we're using now is using, how can we actually use that to not just gather logs from various systems, but where can we find correlations that cannot be seen from one or two systems on their own, but gathering all this together, how does it actually look different? Because of the fact that our footprint is going to be different than any other company. No external can actually really kind of give you the exact similar system that we have. So using this kind of technologies, we see we are able to also go into the machine learning part, which is where you, instead of looking for something you expect to find, as was mentioned earlier with pattern recognition, when you're trying to find something, you actually ask the machines to see what is it that they are observing just from the source data itself. So that gives us a methodology to challenge our thinking, to challenge what we have looked at, and see if there are things we haven't seen and should act upon. And it's also a very important learning journey for us as well, to build knowledge around this field. But we also have put a lot of focus on not just securing the data and confidentiality and access, or giving different kinds of how you secure it, but we also work heavily on identity and access management. Because what we also see is that we need to differentiate between what kind of access you have and what kind of measures you put in place. And one of the most important part there has really been to move to become or have a dynamic identity and access system, so that if I change job, I automatically lose out what are where my privileges, what were my accesses, and I have gain my new ones in my new job. So doing this much more thoroughly, we believe, is giving us better understanding on what is it that's really the relevance of the information that you have access to, and still at the same time managing to get this collaboration to work, because we want to have access to relevant information, but we want to keep out what is not really important for you. And we have a yearly recertification of accesses, so that even if you're not moving, we will catch those that have changed, even if that role hasn't changed that much. So, and of course segregation of duties, I'm sure you're very familiar with the way of working, to avoid that one person cannot do something or that cannot compromise whatever system is. And then the most important thing I think that's changed over the years is the awareness on the people side. And I think one of the good things about the awareness is the media helps you a lot, because media has every week at least something that has gone wrong, somebody that has kind of been, on the private life, that they have been either, hacked, or that there's something. I remember like in Norway they had this Dagbladet, which is a newspaper. They were checking around, calling an no control campaign, where they were just testing around what was lying open and how they could go into people's even video surveillance systems, because they hadn't put on passwords, and how they could actually get into various things. And a lot of people were surprised, of course, because they tend to trust, they trust that the piece of equipment is safe and secure. And now what we're seeing is that people are actually understanding that it's also about how you use that equipment that makes it secure, not necessarily with, factory, username and passwords in it only. So on the behavior side, what we've been doing is we've been running phishing campaigns, which is of course where we send out emails to our not just employees, anyone with a user account, so even our board, everyone gets phishing emails every month. first, you know, we got a lot of, I remember when we started doing this, there were lots of, what is this? kind of thing, you know, somebody's trying to hack me. But what we did was based on the results, and we wanted people to train. Because the most important thing is not to try to find that somebody's done something wrong, but it's actually to be able to see what happens. And how does it actually look like? So if you kind of clicked on the link, you would get to a training website that would tell you, you know, this is what you should be looking for. And the first campaign we ran actually was around Halloween. So the IT guys, they will come up with this, you know, Halloween thing, you know, just to, I think those were the gimmicks that made it a bit less threatening and more fun. And when you make things fun, people tend to be much more happy about it. So what we've done since then, we've done this very regularly. So we have monthly KPIs, so key performance indicators, that tells us the trends. And the thing is that we're seeing, of course, what we would expect, that, you know, the more people actually train, the better they get. So what we're doing is to make them more advanced. Because the point is not to get them down to zero. Is actually to train and, you know, do this when it's actually okay. But what we want to have down to zero is giving away username and password. That's not going to happen ever. So that's a very important, you know, no-go area. But the other thing that has happened since we've been doing this is on the awareness. It's very hard for leaders to really kind of explain these messages if you're not working with an IT. Because put yourself in their shoes, right? They are, you know, they're experts on something else. You know, they might be geologists, expert on actually finding oil and gas. How do you get one of those leaders to explain why it's important to pay attention to information security? Well, what we see on the phishing emails is that it gives also the leaders a tool to help to understand, because they, you know, they get very competitive. I think everyone is competitive by nature. So what we have is that, you know, we break down these surveys, and then you can see, you know, is my department doing worse than that department? We're going to win, right? So there you see that everyone is putting up, you know, their forces and say, you know, we're not going to be worse than them. So what do we need to do? Look for every email, right? And I had incidents where people didn't really dare to open emails because what if I click on the wrong one? But it's not something. It's about being focused when you're doing this operation. It's like driving a car. You don't want people to be really sleepy, and the same goes when you're opening emails or reading things. You know, you have to pay attention. And not just do things because you are automatically clicking on everything and sounds interesting, let me go and see. And we also focus on how does it look like when things go wrong. But we are not just relying on our people. So we have done, like, they don't have administrator rights on their PCs. You know, we have done a lot of things to lock down the equipment to make it so that, you know, hopefully it's very hard to get through all these technology barriers, but we have to rely that there will be somebody that gets through. And then it's more about the observation. How do we actually pay attention? And do we pay attention if things are not normal? What's going on? You know, why are these things happening? Can I actually make sure that you know what to do? So when what we have done now is that on the email, when you get these email, there's a new button where you can actually, from IT, where you can, if you think it's a phishing email, you click on that button and it tells you, well done. You have spotted an official phishing email, right? If it's not, it's checked by IT. So then it's an easy tool for everyone to report what they find is very, you know, suspicious. So it's helping them also into training to how to change their approach and make sure that they are paying attention. And we also run much more training on what we call our high-risk people. And high-risk people aren't, you know, they're again back to the security risk assessments. It's what they work on that could be a challenge. And it could be different from area to area. Some areas it's because of a time period. For example, you know, our economists, they produce our quarterly reports in a period before it's actually notified on the stock exchange. It's very important that it's not, you know, open, because that violates rules. So in that moment of time, the security is extremely heavy. But of course, once it's published. It's open. So security hasn't really, it's not a constant state. It changes with what you're doing and over time. So the most important thing is to follow it through. So then I will finalize with a little bit of what we see important going forward. The balance from a business point of view is that information security is definitely a challenge that's growing and growing and growing. Because from a business point of view, we have to make sure that we are trying to be ahead. Although it sounds like an impossible task, but this is what we really have to have as a vision, is to try to be there to prevent, to be there to detect, and to be there to respond, and also to defer. But all these areas are still important for us to keep focusing on. But it means that we have to, as was mentioned, Einstein, we can't approach things the same way as we have done all the time. We always have to challenge ourselves. What is it that we should be doing now? How should we actually change? Where is it that we should do things differently? And keep that moment of dynamics into the information security, so that you don't just steadily do things better, what you have been doing for a long time, because it might not be the right things you're looking for. And because we know from, especially when I spoke to the CIO of Saudi Aramco, that they had done a lot of things right. They had put in all the technology. They had they had the most top modern systems all around. It wasn't that what was wrong. But one of the challenges they had was they hadn't really, spent a lot of time on the awareness on how to use the systems and how to spot something that was suspicious. And in end, it was a minnepinne, a memory stick. That was the start of the whole attack. And we have, through our policies, banned the use of memory sticks. A lot of complaints there as well, of course. But it's back again to seeing that this can be a challenge. And if you have that awareness perspective, people are accepting it, that it's a bit more hassle. But it's also because we want to help them not to have something go wrong. Because we also know how horrible it feels if somebody would hack you. It feels like you're, out there without clothes, and I'm sure nobody wants to have that experience, and that's why we work to make sure that we can prevent it. So thank you, and hopefully you will have some food for thoughts.